The night my mother toasted my sister's new home, I was the only person in the room who had actually paid for it. Ice clicked against the sides of champagne glasses as my mother rose from Grandma Marilyn's dining table. Vanilla cake and warm candle wax sweetened the air, and the jagged edge of my new house key pressed into my palm beneath the table. I had been holding it so tightly that the grooves had marked my skin. Mom lifted her glass toward my younger sister, Brittany. "To your new home," she said. "At last, Ethan, Lily, and Noah will each have a room of their own." A dozen relatives turned toward Brittany. My aunt clapped first. Someone near the kitchen said, "That is wonderful." Ethan's face brightened. Lily grabbed her mother's arm and whispered something about painting her room lavender. 6-year-old Noah bounced in his chair and asked whether the backyard was big enough for a swing set. Brittany smiled as though a deed had already been placed in her hand. I stayed seated. The key dug deeper into my palm. Grandma Marilyn did not clap. She set her glass down with enough care to make the small sound carry across the table. At 85, she had a way of lowering her voice when everyone else expected her to raise it. "Did the owner agree?" she asked. "Or did you lie to her too?" The room went quiet in stages. First, the applause stopped. Then, the side conversations faded. Finally, even Noah stopped moving. Mom looked at me as if Grandma had asked an embarrassing question about someone else's family. I placed the key on the table where everyone could see it. "I never agreed to give anyone my house," I said. "Before I tell you how my parents promised away a 4-bedroom house they did not own, I hope you are doing well. Stay with me, because the truth behind that promise went far beyond family favoritism. And please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy stories about people who finally stop letting relatives decide what they owe." 6 days earlier, I had walked out of a closing office in Wilmington with a folder under my arm and the first house key I had ever owned. The house stood in Juniper Point, a half-finished development outside the city. It had once been the model home for the neighborhood, which meant every visible surface had been designed to make strangers imagine a better version of their lives. The kitchen had pale stone counters, deep drawers that closed without a sound, and windows facing a narrow line of pines. The living room smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. I had paid $468,000 for it. My down payment was 20%. Money I had built slowly through years of automatic transfers, canceled vacations, and living below what my salary could have supported. I still had a mortgage large enough to keep me humble and savings small enough that one serious repair could hurt. That was why the key mattered. The house was not a gift, a windfall, or proof that I had more than I needed. It was the first major decision in my life that belonged only to me. A cloudy plastic tag hung from the key ring. Model 14 had been printed across it in faded black letters. Grandma had teased me about it when I showed her a photo. "Keep that ugly thing," she said. "Someday, you will want proof the house came with a past." I almost removed the tag anyway, but I left it attached and pushed open the front door. In the former sales office near the entry, a framed summary page still hung on the wall. It listed water mitigation work completed after Hurricane Celia, along with dates, equipment numbers, and a quality review line. I gave it only a brief glance. The bank had supplied a restoration packet, and I had hired an independent home inspector before closing. He had found ordinary cosmetic issues, nothing that justified walking away. My phone rang before I finished checking the kitchen cabinets. Dad did not congratulate me. "Why did you buy that house without asking us?" Kenneth Murphy demanded. I leaned against the counter. "I am 39 years old. Why would I ask permission to buy a house with my own money? You knew your mother and I were working on something for Brittany." "No, I did not." Mom's voice came through the speaker in the background. "Put me on." There was a rustle. Then Gloria Murphy spoke in the soft tone she used whenever she wanted control to sound like concern. "Samantha, we had already promised that house to your sister." I looked around the empty kitchen. "You promised her a house owned by a bank? Your father's company submitted an offer through a limited liability company. Everyone knew the property would work for Brittany and the children." "I did not know." "You saw the listing," Dad said. "You knew Murphy Restoration had worked in that development." Murphy Restoration had worked on hundreds of properties after the hurricane. I had no access to my father's bids, and I had deliberately kept my job separate from his company. I was a senior property claims auditor, not his employee, and I had disclosed the family connection to my employer years earlier. The house was listed publicly, I said. I made an offer. The bank accepted it. That is how buying property works. Dad exhaled hard. Our offer was already in. Then the bank chose mine. Mom cut in before he could answer. Brittany's lease is ending. The children need stability. You have 4 bedrooms and no children. She has 3 children and nowhere secure to take them. I had heard versions of that equation my entire life. My time minus Brittany's need equaled family property. My savings minus Brittany's emergency equaled fairness. What belonged to me became negotiable the moment someone else wanted it more. I am not giving her my house, I said. No one said give, Mom replied quickly. We can discuss an arrangement. You said you promised it to her. For her to live in, Dad said. Do not twist your mother's words. They had twisted their own words in less than a minute. I ended the call after telling them not to enter the property or arrange anything in my name. Then I emailed the same statement to both of them. I had learned that conversations with my parents changed shape the moment a third person asked what had been said. The next morning, a delivery truck stopped in front of the house. I was meeting a locksmith when 2 workers unloaded boxes printed with pictures of children's beds. One label read Ethan. Another read Lily. A smaller carton held a blue wooden headboard with Noah written across the packing slip. The driver checked his tablet. Delivery for Gloria Murphy. She does not live here. He read the address again. Juniper Lane, Model 14. The address is correct. The order is not authorized by the owner. The locksmith paused beside me, holding the new deadbolt. The driver frowned. Are you refusing delivery? Yes, and please record that the owner did not authorize it. I photographed the labels, the invoice numbers, and the order page on his tablet after he agreed. Attached to the paperwork was a floor plan of my house. 3 rooms had been circled in different colors. Ethan's name appeared over the largest upstairs bedroom. Lily's was written beside the window room. Noah's was marked on the bedroom at the east end of the hall. My office was labeled Aunt Sam. The primary bedroom had been left blank. I called the furniture company from the driveway. The representative confirmed Gloria had placed the order 11 days earlier, before I had closed on the house. She had paid the deposit with her own card and scheduled delivery for the day after I received the keys. By the time the truck pulled away, I understood that my parents had not reacted badly to unexpected news. They had built a plan and assumed I would surrender once I discovered it. Brittany arrived 40 minutes later with all 3 children in the back seat. She got out before I could finish speaking with the locksmith. What did you do with their beds? I refused a delivery I did not order. You sent them back? They were never mine to accept. Ethan opened his door, but Brittany turned and told him to stay in the car. Lily leaned between the front seats and waved at me. Noah pressed both hands to the window. I had not seen them in nearly 2 months, though I had asked Brittany twice whether I could take them to the aquarium during spring break. Both times she had said they were busy. Seeing them that close and being told, without words, not to approach me hurt more than the furniture order. I walked toward the car anyway, stopping several feet away. Hi guys, I am happy to see you, Lily smiled. Ethan looked from me to his mother before giving a small wave. Noah asked, Can we see our rooms? Brittany's expression tightened. I crouched slightly so Noah could see my face through the open window. Your grandma told you about rooms before she asked me. That was not your fault. But this is my house, and nobody else is moving in. His smile disappeared. I hated that the truth hurt him, but I would not repair an adult lie by telling a child another one. Brittany pulled me away from the car. You could have waited to say that. You brought them to a house you knew I had not offered you. Mom said you would come around. Did I ever tell you that? She crossed her arms. You have 4 bedrooms and no children, Sam. And you have 3 children. That does not make you the owner of my property. Her face flushed. You always make everything sound like a contract. Because you keep making promises with things that belong to me. She told me I cared more about winning than family. I told her the children would never be blamed for what the adults had done, but they were not going inside to choose rooms. Brittany called me cold, returned to her car, and drove away while Lily watched me through the rear window. I changed every exterior lock that afternoon and reset the garage system. Then I saved the delivery photos, invoice numbers, and a copy of my email to my parents in a folder on my personal computer. 6 days later, Mom raised her glass at Grandma Marilyn's birthday and tried to turn the same lie into a family celebration. After I said I had never agreed to give anyone my house, Mom lowered her champagne slowly. "You are making this sound ugly," she said. "Your sister only needs somewhere temporary while she gets back on her feet. That is not what you told her children." Dad leaned forward. "Do you enjoy humiliating your mother?" She announced that my house belonged to Brittany. "We are talking about family," he said. "Not strangers fighting over a business deal. That distinction seems to matter only when you want something from me." A few relatives looked down at their plates. Brittany sat rigidly beside Justin, who had not spoken once. Ethan stared at the candles. Lily kept glancing toward me. Noah had begun pulling apart the paper wrapper from his straw. Mom reached for a new explanation. "We assumed you would let them stay until the school year was settled. You did not ask me. You assumed you could announce it before I refused. Dad called me selfish." I opened the folder I had brought and placed my closing statement on the table. My name appeared beside the purchase price, the loan amount, and the date ownership transferred. "I bought the house on May 12th, I said. Brittany's furniture was ordered before that. I did not authorize the order, the move, or anyone's use of the address." Grandma looked at Mom. "What exactly did you promise before Samantha owned it?" Mom did not answer. Brittany would not meet my eyes. The next morning, an automated email arrived from the county school enrollment portal. It did not approve anything. The application status read, "Pending residency verification." Below it were the names Ethan Cole, Lily Cole, and Noah Cole, followed by my new address. The application had been submitted 4 days before I closed on the house. The school enrollment office confirmed what the automated email had already suggested. The application using my address had been started, but it had not been approved because Brittany had not provided a deed, lease, utility bill, or signed residency affidavit. I asked the enrollment clerk to place a note in the file stating that I owned the property and had not authorized anyone else to use the address. She remained polite, but her voice changed when I told her the application had been submitted before I closed on the house. "We will not complete the enrollment without valid residency documents," she said. "You may also want to keep a copy of the confirmation email." I had already saved it in 3 places. By 10 that morning, a locksmith had replaced every exterior lock. I reset the garage system, removed the old temporary codes, changed the wireless password, and activated the doorbell camera. I also emailed Mom, Dad, Brittany, and Justin the same written notice. I stated that I was the sole owner of the property. No one had permission to enter. No deliveries were authorized, and no person could use my address for school enrollment, utilities, mail, or residency. Dad called within 5 minutes. "You sent your own parents a trespass notice?" "I sent everyone the same property, access notice." "We are not criminals, Samantha. You ordered furniture, submitted a school application, and planned a move without asking me. Your sister is about to lose her lease. That does not give anyone permission to use my address." He told me that I had become impossible to talk to since I started auditing property claims for a living. According to him, I treated every family conversation like an investigation. "You make people prove everything," he said. "When people tell the truth, that usually is not a problem." He ended the call after warning me not to embarrass the family again. I saved the call time in my notes, though I had not recorded the conversation. At that point, I was still treating the dispute as a boundary problem. I wanted a clear written record because my parents had a habit of rewriting conversations, not because I believed I was documenting anything larger. The following afternoon, my phone alerted me that someone was standing near the garage. I opened the live doorbell feed and saw Justin at the side of the house. He wore work boots and a Murphy Restoration polo shirt. A tape measure hung from his belt. He entered numbers into the garage keypad. The red light flashed. He tried again. When the door did not move, he stepped back and looked toward the utility side of the house. Then he walked along the wall, studying the lower siding and the narrow window beside the laundry room. I pressed the microphone button. "Justin, you do not have permission to be there." He stopped and looked toward the camera. I'm just measuring. Measuring what? The rooms. Brittany wants to know what furniture will fit. I already refused the furniture delivery. That does not mean the kids cannot plan. It means none of you are moving in. His jaw tightened. Your dad said we could at least look at the work that needs doing. What work? He glanced toward the east side of the house before answering. Nothing major. That end room needs a little attention. I could fix it before the kids move in. I have not authorized you to inspect or repair anything. Sam, I do this for a living. That is exactly why you know you need the owner's permission. He muttered something I could not hear and returned to his truck. Before leaving, he looked once more toward the utility window. I downloaded the footage, saved the original file, and emailed Justin a summary of what had happened. I wrote that he had attempted to use an old garage code after receiving written notice that he did not have access. I told him that if he returned without permission, I would report the incident as trespassing. I copied Brittany. Her reply arrived almost immediately. He was only trying to help. I answered with one sentence. Help begins after someone asks for it. I did not contact the police. Justin had not forced a door, damaged the property, or entered the house. A dramatic confrontation would have created more noise than protection. I needed him to know the boundary was documented and that the next violation would not be treated as a misunderstanding. That evening, I went through the house room by room. The place still looked like a model home. Sunlight stretched across the pale wood floors. The kitchen drawers closed softly. Every doorframe appeared straight, and the white walls looked almost untouched. The east hallway felt different. The paint smell was stronger there, sharper than in the living room. At first, I blamed the closed doors and poor circulation. Then I noticed the baseboard beside the smallest bedroom had bowed slightly away from the wall. I crouched and pressed it with one finger. The trim moved. Near the laundry room, one section of flooring gave under my weight with a soft flex. It was not enough to buckle or crack, but it felt different from the boards around it. The east bedroom was cooler than the rest of the second floor. The air had a damp heaviness beneath the paint smell, though there were no visible stains. I pulled up the inspection report from before closing. The inspector had checked the accessible walls, ceilings, plumbing fixtures, crawl space, roof, electrical panel, and heating and cooling system. His moisture readings had not shown an active problem. The report also stated that the inspection was visual and non-invasive. He had not removed fixed cabinets, baseboards, or drywall. I called him rather than inventing an accusation. He remembered the house because it had been a model. He said the surfaces he tested had been within normal range on the day of inspection. The air conditioning had been running, and portable dehumidifiers had been operating because the property had been empty. If the issue is behind a sealed wall cavity, I would not have seen it without a visible sign or an elevated reading at an accessible point, he said. A home inspection is not destructive testing. His explanation made sense. It also meant a clean inspection did not tell me what was inside the wall. Dad arrived the next morning with Justin. They did not attempt to enter. They waited on the front porch until I opened the door, which I took as proof that the written notice had worked. Dad held a thick binder under one arm. Justin carried a framed page I recognized from the former sales office near the entrance. This should end the paranoia, Dad said. I did not invite them farther than the front room. Justin placed the framed page on the counter. The heading read, Final Drying Verification and Moisture Clearance Summary. It listed the affected areas, drying dates, equipment serial numbers, and a final quality review line. This property was cleared, Justin said. Every affected area reached the target drying standard. I studied the layout. The headings, spacing, and review section looked familiar. 4 years earlier, when I had worked briefly as a compliance coordinator for Murphy Restoration, I had designed a verification template for internal training. It was meant to make field documentation more consistent. The page in front of me was a later version of that template. Where's the full binder? I asked. Dad lifted the one he carried. Right here. I want a copy. You do not need company records. You brought company records to prove the house was handled correctly. I brought enough for you to stop insulting the people who know this work better than you do. I reached for the binder, but he pulled it back. I could see only the summary sheet and part of an equipment list. I photographed both before he closed the cover. Justin pointed to the framed page. The developer displayed that in the sales office because buyers kept asking about the hurricane repairs. It has been here for more than a year. That explains why it was framed, I said. It does not explain why you will not give me the supporting records. Dad's mouth tightened. Because the records belong to Murphy Restoration. The repair history concerns a house I own. The bank sold it as is. If you want to tear into perfectly good walls because you are angry with us, that is your decision. Do not expect my company to pay for it. I had not asked his company to pay. I asked which room had suffered the most water intrusion. Justin answered too quickly. The east bedroom and utility wall, but both were dried. The same wall he had walked around the day before. Dad opened the binder again and tapped the equipment list. The machines ran until the readings stabilized. Justin supervised the site. I signed off. That should be enough. It was not enough, but arguing would not create the missing records. Leave a copy of the binder, I said. No. Then take everything with you. Dad stared at me as if he expected me to soften. When I did not, he gathered the framed summary page and walked out. Justin followed, but before leaving, he glanced toward the east hallway. It was the third time I had seen his attention return to that part of the house. That afternoon, Laura Hayes arrived with 2 equipment cases, and the calm manner of someone accustomed to entering homes where people wanted certainty she could not honestly give. Laura was an independent environmental consultant. I had worked with firms like hers through my job, but I had never hired her before and had no professional relationship that could compromise her assessment. I showed her the bowed baseboard, the soft flooring, the east bedroom, and the photographs I had taken of the summary page. She began with non-invasive screening. She took surface moisture readings at multiple heights, checked humidity and temperature, and used thermal imaging to identify patterns worth investigating. A cooler area appeared behind the east bedroom wall, extending toward the utility closet. That does not prove mold, Laura said before I could ask. Thermal differences can have several causes. It tells us where to investigate carefully. The surface readings near the baseboard were higher than those in the rest of the house, though not high enough for her to make a final conclusion. The relative humidity in the east room was also elevated. Could the inspection before closing have missed this? I asked. Yes. Conditions change, and concealed cavities can behave differently from exposed surfaces. Running dehumidifiers can also lower the room reading without resolving moisture trapped behind materials. She opened the utility closet but did not remove any wall panels. On a lower shelf, behind a coil of unused cable, sat a small gray device with a blank screen. I had assumed it belonged to the former sales staff. Laura picked it up by the edges and read the label. This is a data logging thermohygrometer. It looks dead. The battery is dead. That does not necessarily mean the stored data is gone. She photographed the device where she had found it, recorded the serial number, then placed it back in the same position. Do not throw it away, charge it, or let anyone else handle it, she said. Also, do not allow the company that performed the original work to open this wall until the records and current conditions are properly preserved. What about children? I would not let a child sleep or play in the East Room until we know more, especially a child with asthma. That is precautionary advice, not a diagnosis. Brittany arrived before Laura finished packing her equipment. She had all 3 children with her again. Ethan and Lily waited near the front entry while Noah wandered toward the hallway. I stopped him before he reached the east bedroom. Not that way, buddy. He looked up at me. Dad said that one was mine. Brittany heard him. Her face tightened, but she did not correct him. Laura introduced herself and explained that the house needed further evaluation. She kept her language careful. She did not say the house was contaminated or dangerous. She said one area showed abnormal moisture patterns and should not be disturbed until the records were reviewed. Brittany turned to me. So now you have hired someone to make the house sound unlivable. I hired someone to tell me what is actually happening. Our lease ends in 3 weeks. I can send you contacts for a housing counselor and several apartment listings. You mean you will give me phone numbers while you keep 4 bedrooms empty? I could hear how clinical I sounded. Housing resources, listings, documented options. I spoke the language I used when separating a solvable problem from an emotional demand. It was not warm, but it was honest. "I will help you find a safe place," I said. "I will not give you this one." She laughed without humor. "You always offer the smallest thing that lets you feel generous." "I am offering help I can choose to give." Noah coughed twice near the hallway. It could have been the paint smell, dust, his asthma, or nothing connected to the house at all. I did not pretend to know. I opened the front door. "The children should not be here until the inspection is complete." Brittany stared at me. "They are not fragile." "This is not about whether they are fragile." Laura advised against using that room, and Noah has asthma. "Justin can open the wall this weekend and fix whatever she thinks she found." There it was. Not inspect the whole house. Not ask an independent contractor for an estimate. Open that wall, this weekend, before Laura could compare the current conditions with the old restoration records. "You are not authorizing Justin to touch anything in my house," I said. "It would cost you nothing." "It could cost me the evidence of what happened here." Brittany's expression changed. For the first time, she looked less offended than frightened. She took the children back to the car. Lily waved before getting in. Ethan kept his eyes down. Noah asked whether his blue bed was coming back, but Brittany closed the door before I could answer. Laura called me that evening. She had compared the equipment serial numbers visible in my photograph with records from a rental supplier that maintained searchable job histories for its commercial clients. "One of the dehumidifiers listed on the model home drawing log has a location problem," she said. "What kind of problem?" "The log says it was operating at your house on September 22nd. The rental record shows the same serial number checked in at another job across the county that morning." I sat at my apartment table with the house key beside my laptop. "That could be a clerical error." "It could," Laura said, "but equipment cannot dry two houses at the same time." The house had not failed an inspection. Someone had built a record designed to make it look as though the work had been completed. Laura sent me the rental records before breakfast the next morning. The first page listed the dehumidifier serial number from the summary Dad had brought to my house. The second page showed that same machine checked in at a waterfront condominium across the county on September 22nd. Murphy Restoration's log claimed it had continued running inside Model 14 through the evening of September 23rd. A second air mover had the same problem. According to the completion summary, it had remained in my east bedroom for 3 days after the rental company recorded it at another job. I read the pages twice before calling Laura. "Could the rental company have entered the wrong serial number?" I asked. "It is possible," she said. "That is why this is a discrepancy, not a conclusion." But two conflicting serials make a clerical mistake less convincing. Could Murphy Restoration have owned another machine with the same number? No, manufacturer serials are unique. Laura reminded me not to contact my employer's claims department or search any internal system. The property had passed through insurance work, and even an innocent search could later be framed as misuse of confidential data. I had already reached the same conclusion. I forwarded the seller packet, Laura's findings, and my own photographs to the attorney I had retained after Justin tried my garage code. Then I wrote a short timeline, beginning with the date Dad's limited liability company submitted its offer and ending with the rental discrepancy. I did not accuse anyone of fraud. I wrote only what each document could prove. That restraint mattered less to my family than I expected. By noon, Aunt Denise called to ask why I was suing my parents over a house repair. A cousin sent me a screenshot of a family group chat I had not been included in. Mom had written that I was using my professional position to manufacture defects, force the bank into a settlement, and make my parents look dishonest because they had tried to help Brittany. Brittany posted something less specific and more effective. "Some people have empty rooms and still choose to watch 3 children lose their school and their sense of home. Money can buy a house, but it cannot buy a heart." She did not name me. She did not need to. Relatives filled the comments with prayers, angry faces, and offers to help the children. One woman from Mom's church wrote that families should never need a contract to care for one another. I saved screenshots before responding. The house is privately owned, no move was ever authorized, and one area is under independent safety review. No child has been denied a home by me. Please do not use the children to spread claims that are not true. I posted it once and turned off notifications. My correction was accurate, but it did not compete well with Brittany's photograph of 3 children beside packed boxes. Facts required attention. Gloria's version required only outrage. That afternoon, my attorney called about a separate issue. The asset manager had reviewed access alerts from the final days before closing. One alert showed an old employee code used at the model home shortly after 11 at night, the evening before I received the keys. The code had opened the garage. The property manager still had security footage from a camera mounted above the shared model home parking area. With the asset manager's permission, my attorney obtained a preserved copy. The man in the video was not Justin. He wore a dark work jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He entered through the garage, remained inside for 12 minutes, then came out carrying a dented metal file box. Before crossing the parking lot, he looked directly toward the camera. I recognized him from an old Murphy Restoration staff photograph. Cody Baker had managed field crews when I worked briefly for my father. He had been competent, quiet, and almost aggressively private. Dad fired him less than a year after I left. When I sent the still image to Justin and asked whether he could identify the man, he answered within 3 minutes. Cody, he stole materials when Dad fired him. You should call the police. Dad called immediately afterward and gave me the same instruction. That box probably contains company property, he said. Cody has held a grudge for years. What did he steal when he was fired? Tools, copper fittings, whatever he could carry. Was he charged? Dad paused. We handled it privately. Was there an inventory report? You are doing it again. Doing what? Interrogating your own father while a thief walks away with evidence from your property. His use of the word evidence made me stop writing. What evidence do you think was in the box? I meant property. No, you did not. He ended the call. Cody's current address did not appear in a normal directory, but his name was attached to a small cabinet repair business registered north of Wilmington. The workshop was about 40 minutes from Harbor Ridge. My attorney advised me not to go alone. I told her I would meet Cody in daylight, inside a commercial building, with my location shared and the conversation documented in notes. She did not like it, but she also knew I was not asking permission. Cody answered the workshop door wearing safety glasses and a dust-coated shirt. Behind him, unfinished cabinet doors rested on padded racks. The room smelled of cut pine, machine oil, and burnt coffee. He recognized me before I introduced myself. Kenneth's auditor, he said. My name is Samantha. That is what I said. I showed him the still image from the camera. You entered Model 14 the night before I closed. I did. You used an old employee code. It still worked. You removed a metal box. I carried it out. What was inside? He took off his glasses and wiped them with the bottom of his shirt. You drove 40 minutes to ask questions you have already arranged like accusations. You entered property you did not own after business hours. So did your brother-in-law, according to people still willing to talk. Justin came after I owned it. I documented that too. Cody gave a short, humorless laugh. You sound exactly like Kenneth when he wants a confession. Date, time, location. Then answer only what was asked. The comparison irritated me because it contained enough truth to land. I had entered the workshop assuming the cleanest way to reach the truth was to corner him with facts. That method worked on inconsistent records. It worked less well on people who had spent years being cornered by my father. I closed my notebook. Tell me what I am missing. Cody studied me for several seconds. You are missing the part where I am not a good man because I kept papers. I did not call you one. You need either a thief or a witness. I am both. He led me to a work table in the back and set down a metal box with the same bent corner shown in the footage. Inside were 3 field notebooks, printed photographs, copied drying sheets, and 2 small storage drives sealed in plastic bags. Cody did not let me touch them. After the hurricane, your father took more jobs than the company had machines or crews to handle, he said. Model 14 was supposed to stay open until the east wall and utility cavity tested dry. Kenneth moved the equipment to a hotel job because that contract paid a rush premium. Justin supervised the model home. Justin followed the bonus. Cody opened a notebook to a page dated September 21st, 2 years earlier. His handwriting was narrow and crowded. The entry listed elevated readings along the east wall and a recommendation to remove more drywall. Below it, in darker ink, someone had written close and release. Whose handwriting is that? Kenneth's. Can you prove it? I can say I watched him write it. Whether anyone believes me is another issue. He showed me printed photographs of exposed framing. Dark watermarks climbed several inches above the bottom plate. Each photograph had a date, time, and job code printed along the edge. Why were these records still in the garage? When I refused to change my notebook, Kenneth ordered me to turn over every company record and leave. I copied what I could, put the notebook I owned, and the copies in my personal field box, and hid it behind the model home staging shelves. I thought I would return after I found a lawyer. But you waited almost 2 years. I had a mortgage, a wife recovering from surgery, and every contractor in the county knew your father. Kenneth did not have to threaten me. He only had to tell people I stole from him. Did you take anything that belonged to the company? I took 2 battery packs when I left. I was angry. That gave Kenneth one true fact to wrap around a much larger lie. Cody admitted he had entered the garage without permission because he saw the pending sale and knew the new owner would change the code or clear the shelves. He had not contacted the bank, the insurer, or a licensing board. Fear explained his silence. It did not excuse it. Why are you talking now? Because you bought the one house that can prove the logs were false. No owner lived there between mitigation and sale. They cannot blame a leaking dishwasher, a child's bath, or someone refusing to run the air conditioner. He tapped one of the storage drives. My attorney has copies of everything. Yours can speak to mine. I will not hand you a box so your family can say Kenneth's daughter altered it. That was the first thing he said that made me trust him more. Not completely, but enough to continue. When I stood to leave, my house keys slid from my bag onto the work table. The faded plastic tag turned face up. Cody stared at it. Model 14. You remember the code? That was not only the sales model number. The developer stored every original sales office and restoration file by model number before the roads received final addresses. The asset manager said they had already given me the seller packet. They gave you the packet under your street address. Ask for the archived model file. The old binders were moved to an off-site warehouse when the developer failed. I photographed the tag and sent the image to my attorney from the parking lot. She issued a preservation request that afternoon, identifying Model 14, the former sales office, the hurricane work order, and the warehouse index Cody had described. The asset manager's counsel responded 2 days later. They had found an additional restoration binder in off-site storage. The scanned file arrived through a secure link. It contained equipment schedules, drying maps, photographs, and a quality review page that had not appeared in the seller packet. I opened the page at my kitchen table. At the bottom, beneath the words, Outside Compliance Review, my full name appeared, Samantha Murphy. Beside it was a signature that looked exactly like mine. The signature looked convincing because it was mine. Not a rough imitation. Not my name typed in a script font. The shape beneath the review line matched the signature I had used when I worked for Murphy Restoration 4 years earlier, down to the long final stroke beneath my last name. I enlarged the page on my screen without downloading or editing it. The archived binder remained on the asset manager's secure portal, where the original upload date and access history could be preserved. My first thought was not that someone had forged my signature. I remembered the day I had placed the original on paper. 4 years earlier, Murphy Restoration had occupied a converted warehouse with offices built above the equipment bay. I had worked there for 18 months as a compliance coordinator, trying to turn Dad's collection of handwritten logs, receipts, and verbal instructions into a system that could survive an audit. The argument that ended my employment began with a quality control form for a house I had never visited. Dad placed it on my desk late on a Friday afternoon. I need this submitted before 5. The completion section had already been filled out. The drying dates, equipment records, and final readings appeared complete. The review line was blank. I did not review this job, I said. You reviewed the file. I looked at 2 pages because Gloria asked whether the customer's address was correct. That is not a quality review. The crew is done. Justin checked the site. Then Justin can sign for the work he verified. Dad shut my office door. The carrier trusts your documentation. That is not a reason to put my name on something I cannot confirm. He lowered his voice as if volume, rather than content, was the problem. We have payroll due Monday. The payment will not release without a completed file. I am not signing it. You are letting a technicality endanger 30 families. That was how he framed every boundary. If I refused him, I was never protecting myself or following a rule. I was taking food from employees, stability from Brittany, or dignity from my parents. I pushed the form back across the desk. If the work is complete, send me the missing records, and I will review them Monday. If you need the form today, assign it to someone who actually inspected the site. Dad stared at me for several seconds, then picked up the page. You have always needed to prove you are smarter than everyone in this family. No, I need my signature to mean I did the work beside it. I resigned the following Monday. I did not disappear without explanation. That evening, I called Brittany and told her exactly what had happened. Dad asked me to sign work I could not verify. I said I refused. Brittany was silent, then asked whether leaving immediately was really necessary. He did not ask me to fix a mistake. He asked me to make the file look complete. He says the job was done. Then someone who verified that should sign it. She sighed. You know the company is under pressure. I know, pressure does not make the form true. Brittany knew why I left. She later repeated Dad's version anyway, that I had abandoned the business during a difficult season because rules mattered more to me than people. Believing him allowed her and Justin to keep accepting money, jobs, and protection from our parents, without questioning what made those things possible. The memory ended with me still staring at the archived page bearing my signature. I called my attorney before I called anyone in my family. She told me not to forward the binder to my personal email, print it, mark it, or send screenshots to relatives. She contacted the Asset Managers Council and requested that the archived file, warehouse index, upload records, and original paper binder be preserved. Cody's attorney arranged a separate transfer of his materials. Every notebook, photograph, copy, and storage drive was listed. The attorneys recorded who had possessed each item, when Cody recovered the metal box, and when the evidence changed hands. Cody retained the original notebooks. Forensic copies of the storage drives were created, so no one needed to work from the originals. I wanted to read everything immediately. Instead, I let people trained to preserve evidence do their jobs. Then I reported myself. My employer already knew Kenneth Murphy owned Murphy Restoration. I had disclosed the relationship when I joined the company and renewed the disclosure each year. Our conflict system prevented claims involving my father's business from being assigned to me. I had never handled Model 14, and until I bought the house, I had not known an insurance claim connected to it existed. Still, my name was now attached to a review page in a restoration file. I sent an ethics disclosure before noon. I explained the house purchase, the family dispute, the archived binder, Cody's records, and the signature. I stated that I had not used company data to identify, price, or investigate the property. I requested removal from any work involving Murphy Restoration and offered access to every relevant record under my employer's control. An ethics investigator called me that afternoon. Did you search the address before making your offer? She asked. No. Did you search Murphy Restoration? No. Did any colleague tell you the property had an unresolved claim? No. Did you know your father's company had submitted a bid to buy it? Not until after closing. She asked whether I had accessed any claims connected to Harbor Ridge, the failed developer, the bank, or the restoration work. I told her I had not, but I understood that she needed to verify that independently. We will review your access logs, badge records, calendar, email, and conflict disclosures, she said. Do not search for anything yourself. I will not. You also need to preserve your personal communications concerning the purchase. They are already being preserved through counsel. There was a brief pause. You acted quickly, she said. I knew what the alternative would look like. The following morning, my manager informed me that I was being placed on paid administrative leave while ethics completed its review. My access to active claim systems was suspended. I could receive email from the investigation team but could not enter the company network or contact coworkers about the matter. The leave was neutral. I understood that. It still felt like being removed from the life I had built because my family had placed my name on a page. I cleared the few personal items from my desk under supervision. No one accused me, no security officer marched me out. My manager said the process protected both me and the company. I thanked him, carried my bag to the parking garage, and sat in my car without starting the engine. For years, my career had been the one part of my life my parents could not redefine. They could call me cold, selfish, or disloyal, but my work had records, rules, and people who knew what I had done. Now their version of me had entered that system too. Mom called before I left the garage. "Samantha, we need to stop this before innocent people get hurt." "Which innocent people?" "Your father has 28 employees. Some have been with us for more than a decade. They have children, mortgages, medical bills. I did not submit false records. You do not know that anything is false. My signature appears on a review I did not perform. It may be an administrative error. Then the investigation will determine that." Her voice softened. "Investigations destroy businesses even when no one did anything wrong. Using my name could destroy my career. You are on paid leave." I had not told her. "How do you know that?" "Brittany heard it from Justin. Your father had to explain why the insurer was asking questions." "My employer has not contacted Dad." "Maybe not yet." I wrote down the time of the call. Mom continued in the careful tone she used when approaching the real purpose of a conversation. "Come to the house tonight. Just you, your father, and me. We can correct the misunderstanding before lawyers turn it into something none of us can control." "What are you proposing?" "We need to speak as a family. Send the proposal in writing." She hesitated. "You want your mother to email you before we can have a conversation? If you want me to take an action concerning the investigation or the house, put it in writing." Her tone warmed. She thought I was considering a deal. "All right," she said. "Your father and I will explain everything." After she hung up, I saved my notes with the rest of the timeline. My attorney arranged for a forensic document examiner to review the signature pages. The initial examination was limited. The expert did not yet have every original document, and she would not make a final conclusion from compressed PDF copies. She could identify a pattern. 3 review forms from the archived binder contained signatures with the same tiny gray mark near the first letter of my last name. The final stroke ended with the same pixel break in each file. Natural signatures varied. These did not. "They appear to contain the same source image," she explained. "The image has been resized, but the internal defects remain identical." I remembered the training template I had created at Murphy Restoration. It included one completed sample page bearing my signature, used to show staff where reviewers should sign. Gloria had maintained the training files. She had also managed user accounts and the shared office mailbox. The ethics investigator called the next day with another finding. My old Murphy Restoration address had never been fully deleted. Messages sent to it no longer reached me, but the address remained active as an alias connected to a general compliance mailbox. "An alias does not prove someone impersonated you," she warned. "We still need server records, mailbox permissions, and messages." "Who controlled the mailbox?" "That is one of the questions. Gloria did when I worked there. We will verify current access through the proper process." I wanted to call Mom and demand an answer. Instead, I gave the information to my attorney. The temptation to confront people was strongest when I knew enough to be angry, but not enough to prove what had happened. I had made that mistake before. I was not going to warn Gloria, which records mattered while the evidence was still being preserved. That evening, the written proposal arrived from Mom's personal email. She described it as a temporary family resolution. Brittany and the children would be permitted to occupy the house for 6 months. Justin would perform any necessary repairs at no cost to me. I would pause the environmental inspection and withdraw any complaints against Murphy Restoration. In return, Dad would contact my employer and clarify that my name had appeared in the file as part of an old internal process, not because I had done anything improper. Mom ended the message by saying the arrangement would protect my career, keep 28 people employed, and prevent 3 children from becoming homeless. I forwarded it to my attorney without responding. Before she could call me, a formal complaint reached my employer. Murphy Restoration alleged that I had used confidential insurance information to identify a distressed property, purchase it below market value, and create a dispute intended to pressure the company into paying for renovations. The complaint included my closing date, job title, family relationship, and several claims about internal information I had supposedly accessed. None of those claims came with access records. The ethics team treated the complaint seriously because they had to. They added it to the investigation and requested the original electronic file from Murphy Restoration, rather than relying only on the copy attached to the email. The next afternoon, the ethics investigator called. "The complaint does not establish that you accessed anything," she said. "But the attachment has useful metadata." "What does it show?" "The PDF was created 9 days before the asset manager released the archived binder containing your signature." I opened my timeline. 9 days earlier placed its creation, before Cody spoke to me, before the warehouse file was found, and before I had reported the signature to my employer. Could the date be wrong? It could be altered. We are verifying it against the source email and the system that created the document. At this point, it tells us the complaint may have been prepared earlier than Murphy Restoration claims. Dad called while I was still speaking with her. I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief. "Stop the inspection. Let Justin handle the wall. Give Brittany temporary access, and we will explain to your company that you were never involved. Keep pushing, and we cannot protect you from what those files say." I sent the voicemail to my attorney. Later that week, the ethics team completed its first comparison of the review forms produced through counsel. My access logs were still being checked, and no final conclusions had been issued. The investigator asked me to join a secure video call. She placed one of the signature pages on the screen, followed by another from a different property. Then another. Each carried my name. Each claimed I had performed an outside compliance review after I had left Murphy Restoration. "The same source signature image appears on at least 7 claims," she said. "All 7 were submitted after your employment with the company ended. 7 claims carried my name, and none of them matched a day when I could have performed the review." The ethics investigator warned me that the finding was preliminary. A duplicated signature image did not automatically prove who had inserted it, and a suspicious date did not explain the entire file. Still, the review had changed direction. I was no longer only defending myself against an allegation. My employer was trying to determine how my identity had entered claims I had never touched. 2 days later, my attorney arranged a meeting at a neutral conference room in another law office. My parents had requested it through their counsel after I forwarded Mom's so-called family resolution to ethics. I agreed, because I wanted to hear what they would say when every person in the room understood the conversation was formal. Dad arrived in a dark suit he usually reserved for bank meetings and funerals. Mom wore cream-colored slacks and carried a leather folder. Brittany came without Justin, though his attorney joined by video. My parents' lawyer sat beside them with a legal pad open in front of him. My attorney had told me not to argue about morality. We were there to clarify their proposal, not persuade them to become different people. Dad began before anyone formally introduced the purpose of the meeting. "This has gone far enough," he said. "Samantha has already damaged the company's reputation, and now employees are asking whether their jobs are safe." My attorney looked at him. "The meeting concerns the proposal your wife sent, not a general discussion of blame." Mom slid a printed copy of her email across the table. "The proposal is simple. Brittany and the children need the house temporarily. Justin can address the minor issue in the east wall at no charge. Samantha suspends further invasive testing, and everyone withdraws the complaints that have created this mess." "There is no invasive testing scheduled," I said. "The wall has not been opened." "Then there is nothing to suspend," Brittany replied. "There is an independent assessment underway." Dad leaned toward me. "You know Justin can handle that room in one afternoon. I know he attempted to enter my garage after I told him he had no permission. He tried an old code. He did not break in. He came with a tape measure and later said he wanted to open the same wall that showed abnormal readings." Mom raised one hand. "This is exactly why we need an agreement. Every ordinary action is being interpreted as evidence." My attorney asked the question that mattered. "What specifically will Murphy Restoration do if Samantha permits access and pauses her inspection?" Dad's lawyer answered carefully. "The company would notify her employer that any appearance of her name in historical records resulted from legacy administrative practices. Murphy Restoration would withdraw its concern that she used private claim information to acquire the property." "Concern?" I asked. "Your complaint accused me of professional misconduct." Dad's lawyer did not look at me. "The language can be clarified." "And if I refuse?" Dad folded his arms. "Then the files speak for themselves. The files say I reviewed 7 claims after I left the company. They say your name was associated with compliance, Mom said. You created the forms. You trained people. You continued answering questions after you left. I did not. You answered my call once when I could not find a password. I told you where the password instructions were stored. That did not make me an outside reviewer. Brittany shifted in her chair. Why are you making this harder? You can let us stay for 6 months. Dad can clear your name, and Justin can fix the room. You lose nothing. I lose control of my house and the condition of the evidence. You hear yourself, right? She asked. You keep calling our family evidence. My attorney touched the edge of my notepad, reminding me not to take the bait. I looked at my parents' lawyer. I need every condition stated precisely. Who occupies the property, for how long, who receives access, what work is permitted, which complaint is withdrawn, and what statement Murphy Restoration sends my employer. Mom's expression relaxed slightly. She thought detail meant negotiation. Put the full proposal in writing, I said, including what happens if I do not agree. Dad looked at Mom, and she gave him the smallest nod. We can do that, she said. The meeting ended without my granting anyone access, pausing any investigation, or promising Brittany a place to live. Mom sent the revised document that evening under the subject line, Family Resolution Confidential. It was more useful than I'd expected. The proposal required me to grant Brittany, Justin, and the children immediate occupancy for 6 months, with an option for the family to extend the arrangement. Justin would receive permission to remove and replace materials in the east bedroom and utility wall. I would terminate Laura's assessment, withdraw any complaint to a licensing authority, and instruct my attorney not to contact other insurers or property owners. In exchange, Murphy Restoration would retract its complaint to my employer and provide a statement saying my name had appeared in company records because of an internal administrative misunderstanding. The final paragraph stated that if I rejected the agreement, Murphy Restoration would preserve all rights to defend itself by establishing my continuing historical role in compliance oversight. The language was polished, but the exchange was plain. Give them the house, let Justin open the wall, stop asking questions. Then they would stop accusing me of misconduct. I forwarded the document to my attorney and the ethics investigator. I did not reply to Mom. The next morning, the investigator called with the first piece of good news I had received since the signature appeared. We completed the initial review of your internal access history, she said. There is no record that you searched the model home address, the developer, the bank's asset manager, or Murphy Restoration before you submitted your purchase offer. I gripped the phone more tightly. What about related claims? We found no access that would have given you non-public information about the property. Your conflict restriction also prevented those files from appearing in your normal assignment queue. So the complaint is disproven? The allegation that you used our system to identify the property is unsupported by the logs. We still need to complete the review because your name appears on multiple external claim documents. Will I return to work? Not yet. Paid leave continues until we finish the conflict review and confirm the scope of the false review records. It was not a complete victory, but it restored something important. The systems I had worked within for years showed that I had not abused them. My parents' accusation depended on people believing there must be hidden access somewhere. The access logs did not care what Gloria believed, what Dad claimed, or how many relatives shared Brittany's post. They showed what I had opened and what I had not. I should have let the formal process continue without interfering. Instead, I called Brittany. I told myself I was not confronting her. I wanted to understand whether she had ever seen my old training signature or heard Gloria discuss the compliance mailbox. I believed asking before the investigation widened might give her a chance to tell the truth without being cornered by lawyers. That was the explanation I gave myself. The real reason was that I wanted one person in my family to look at the evidence and admit what it meant. We met at a coffee shop near Brittany's apartment. She arrived 10 minutes late and placed her phone face up beside her drink. I showed her a printed comparison prepared by the document examiner. It contained only the signatures, claim dates, and visible duplication marks. I did not show her Cody's notebook, the rental records, or the full archived binder. These signatures all came from the same image, I said. They were placed on records after I left the company. Brittany stared at the page. I do not know anything about claim forms. You worked in Mom's office during tax season. I filed receipts. Did you ever see the old training template? I filed hundreds of things. Did Mom keep my former email address active? How would I know? Did Justin ever mention using my name on compliance reviews? Her expression hardened. You said this was not an interrogation. I did not say that. You asked me to have coffee and then placed evidence on the table. I am asking what you know. You are asking questions in a way that assumes I am lying. I heard my father's description of me in her complaint. Date, time, person responsible. I had arrived with a comparison chart and expected honesty to emerge because the pattern was obvious. I am not saying you created these, I said. I am trying to understand whether you heard anything. She pushed the page back toward me. Justin said your name was still on old forms because you designed the system, that is all. When did he say that? There you go again. Before or after I bought the house? I do not remember. Did Mom tell you the company could clear my name if I let you move in? Her cheeks reddened. She said the whole thing could be fixed if you stopped treating everyone like criminals. The proposal connects your occupancy to withdrawing a professional complaint. I did not write it, but you were in the meeting asking me to accept it. She stood and picked up her phone. I came because I thought maybe you wanted to talk like sisters. I did. No, you wanted a witness. She left before I could answer. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car without starting it. She made a call almost immediately. I could not hear the conversation, but I did not need to imagine who she called. I had warned her that the signature pattern existed and that investigators were looking at the old email system. My attorney was direct when I told her. You showed Brittany an active forensic finding? A limited comparison. And she has contact with Gloria and Justin. Yes. Then assume they now know exactly which records are under scrutiny. She did not lecture me. She did not need to. I had done what I often criticized in other people. I had acted to relieve emotional pressure without considering how the action changed the evidence environment. The mistake did not erase the preserved binders, Cody's materials, or the metadata already secured by my employer. It did give Gloria time to react. Cody called the following morning. A former crew coordinator contacted me, he said. Gloria has people cleaning old digital folders. What does cleaning mean? Deleting duplicate job files, closing unused email addresses, and archiving former employee material. That is what she is calling it. Does he have proof? He received a written instruction to purge legacy compliance folders. He is afraid to forward it from the company system. I contacted my attorney before asking Cody for anything else. She issued an expanded preservation demand to Murphy Restoration and its counsel. The demand identified the former compliance alias, the hosted email system, the document platform, claim folders connected to my name, and any deletion or retention records. She explained the limit clearly. A preservation demand puts them on notice that relevant information must not be destroyed, she said. It does not give us authority to enter their system, seize devices, or read private files. Then how do we know what they deleted? We may not know immediately. Your employer has contractual audit rights over files submitted on its claims. The licensing board can request records through its complaint process and issue subpoenas when appropriate. We preserve first, then obtain access lawfully. My employer's special investigations and vendor audit teams had already opened a review because the 7 claim files included work billed to affiliated carriers. Under the restoration company's vendor agreements, the insurers could demand supporting documentation for work submitted for payment. That did not give them every private record Murphy Restoration owned. It gave them access to specific claim files, equipment logs, invoices, subcontractor documentation, and communications tied to the billed work. My attorney also submitted a complaint package to the state licensing board. It included the conflicting equipment records, the archived binder, Cody's notebook excerpts, the signature comparison, and the written family proposal. The board acknowledged receipt and instructed Murphy Restoration to preserve relevant records pending review. A formal subpoena followed for specified electronic files and account history data. By then, Gloria had already attempted the cleanup. The hosted email provider retained administrative audit logs even when users deleted mailboxes or aliases. Those logs did not reveal every deleted message on their own, but they recorded who had accessed the control panel, what account had been changed, and when the action occurred. The former compliance alias connected to my name had been removed the morning after I met Brittany. 3 folders containing my name were deleted from the document platform within the next 2 hours. The administrator account used for both actions belonged to Gloria. Cloud retention preserved recoverable versions because the vendor's policy held deleted business data for a fixed period. The attempt to make the records disappear created a time-stamped path directly back to her account. I did not feel triumphant when my attorney told me. I thought about Brittany sitting in her car after our meeting. I could not prove she had called Mom about the signatures. But the timing made the consequence impossible to ignore. My need to confront her had accelerated Gloria's response. The formal process had still caught it. That difference mattered. I had made an error, but I had not depended on luck alone. The records were already identified, the service provider had retention systems, and the insurer and board had lawful authority to demand specific information. The investigation expanded over the next 2 weeks. A forensic reviewer compared all 7 claims bearing my signature. The same image defects appeared on each page. One signature had been stretched wider. Another had been darkened. A third had been placed over a line so poorly that part of the underline covered printed text. The surrounding records showed other repetitions. 2 properties listed the same air mover operating at overlapping times. 3 invoices came from a vendor whose mailing address matched a commercial mailbox. Several final review pages used identical wording, including the same misspelled equipment term. The model home was no longer the entire case. It was the first place where physical conditions, original records, equipment history, and a preserved structure could all be compared. The forensic reviewer scheduled a secure presentation with my attorney and the ethics investigator. She placed 7 claim summaries side by side on the screen. Each page listed a date when I had supposedly performed an outside compliance review. On 2 of those dates, I had been attending conferences in other states. My airline records and hotel receipts supported the travel, but the reviewer did not rely only on those obvious alibis. On another date, my employee badge showed me entering my office before 8 and leaving after 6, while the false review claimed I had conducted a remote site file assessment during a 3-hour client meeting documented on my calendar. One review was dated during a mandatory training session, with attendance records and emails sent from the training room. Another appeared on a day when I had taken no leave, logged no remote work, and spent the afternoon in recorded internal meetings. For the remaining 2, email metadata and system activity showed a normal workday with no contact, access, or file transfer connected to Murphy Restoration. The reviewer looked from one record to the next. Individually, someone might argue that a calendar changed or a review occurred outside working hours, she said. Collectively, the pattern is not credible. 7 external reviews are attributed to Samantha, yet none aligns with her access history, location records, work calendar, or communications. 7 dates, 7 claims. Not one moment when the work attributed to me could be shown to have happened. 7 false reviews should have made the situation feel simpler. Instead, the clearest evidence against my family arrived at the same time I learned what their lies had cost me outside the investigation. The first sign came from Brittany. She texted me late on a Sunday evening after another relative challenged her claim that the house was safe. Noah was checked by a doctor. He is fine. Stop using my child to make your case. I read the message twice. Until then, I had known only that Noah had coughed during his brief visit and that Laura had advised keeping him away from the East Room. Brittany had never mentioned a doctor. I replied without accusing her of anything. When was he seen, and what did the clinician say? Her answer came several minutes later. Before you closed, Justin took us through the house when it was still being shown. Noah played in the room for maybe 20 minutes. He started wheezing later. It was probably dust. The fact that my sister and her children had toured the house before I owned it was not illegal by itself. The property had still been available for scheduled viewings. What mattered was that Noah had reacted after spending time in the exact room Justin later wanted to open. I asked Brittany to share the urgent care note voluntarily if she intended to continue telling relatives and investigators that the room was safe. She accused me of trying to obtain her son's medical records. I told her I had no right to access them and would not attempt to do so. She could download the visit summary from her own patient portal and send it, or she could stop using Noah's condition to defend the house. The next morning, she emailed the document. The note did not say mold had poisoned Noah. It did not diagnose an environmental illness or identify my house as the cause. It stated that he had experienced mild wheezing after visiting a vacant property with dust, strong paint odor, and suspected dampness. The clinician treated the symptoms, advised continued use of his prescribed inhaler as directed, and recommended avoiding the environment until it had been assessed. The note was dated May 11th, the day before I closed. Brittany had received that advice before the furniture delivery, before Grandma Marilyn's birthday, and before she brought the children back to the house. I forwarded the document to my attorney and Laura, with Brittany's email showing that she had provided it voluntarily. Then I called my sister. "You knew a clinician advised keeping Noah away," I said. "He was fine by the time we left urgent care." "That is not what I asked. It was a precaution. Doctors give cautious instructions because they do not want liability. And you still plan to put him in the room where he started wheezing?" Justin said the room had already been cleared. Justin also tried to enter my garage after I changed the code. She released a tired breath. "You turn every fact into the worst possible version." "No? I am reading the note you sent me. He needed a home, Sam. All three of them did. He needed a safe home. That is not the same thing." She ended the call. Later that week, Grandma Marilyn asked whether I could visit while the children were at her house. Brittany had agreed to leave them there for several hours while she attended an appointment. Marilyn made it clear that she had told Brittany I might stop by. I did not want the children to feel that adults were arranging secret meetings around them. I also did not want to use them to gather information. They had already been placed in the middle of a conflict they had not created. When I arrived, Ethan was building something with wooden blocks at the dining table. Lily sat on the floor beside a stack of colored paper, cutting uneven stars. Noah had lined up 3 toy cars along the windowsill. Lily ran toward me, then stopped halfway across the room. "Are you allowed to hug me?" she asked. The question struck harder than anything my parents had said in the conference room. "I am always allowed to hug you if you want one." She crossed the rest of the space and wrapped both arms around my waist. Noah left his cars and joined us. Ethan remained near the table, watching carefully before coming over. I had brought books for each of them, but I kept the bag by the door. I did not want presents to become the price of affection. Marilyn offered lemonade and went into the kitchen, close enough to hear if the children needed her, but far enough to give us space. Lily sat beside me on the couch and turned one of the paper stars between her fingers. "Are you still mad at us about the house?" she asked. "I was never angry with any of you. Mom said you did not want us there. I did not agree for anyone to live in my house. That is different from not wanting you in my life." Ethan looked down at his blocks. "Grandma Gloria said we asked you for too much." "What did she say?" I kept my voice gentle. "I did not reach for my phone or notebook. She said not to call you all the time because you had your own life. She said you did not like when people always needed things." Lily frowned. "But you answered when we called from Grandma Marilyn's phone?" "I did. Grandma Gloria took Mom's phone once," Ethan continued. "She said you were working, and we should stop bothering you." "Do you remember when that happened?" He shrugged. "A lot. I did not press him for dates. He was 10 years old, not a witness under examination." Noah climbed onto the edge of the couch. "Mom said you did not come to my school thing. I did not know about it." "You did not?" "No. I would not tell you I was coming and then choose not to show up." He seemed to consider that. "I wore the green shirt. I would have liked to see it." Lily went to a drawer and returned with a birthday card I had mailed months earlier. The envelope had never been opened. My handwriting ran across the front beside a postal label showing it had been delivered to Brittany's address. "Mom gave it to me last week," she said. I remembered choosing that card because the cover showed a girl reading beneath a tree. Lily had once called me from the library to ask whether books could become friends if a person read them enough times. I had mailed her 2 novels with the card. She told me she had never received the books. Ethan remembered the model bridge we built for his science project 2 years earlier. He said he had asked whether I could help again, but Gloria told him I was too busy. Noah remembered that I carried an extra spacer for his inhaler when we went to the aquarium. He did not remember the missed calls or canceled visits. At 6, he remembered people through objects and routines: a green shirt, a toy shark from the aquarium, the small plastic tube attached to his inhaler, each detail filled in a pattern I had not wanted to see. Brittany had canceled lunches at the last minute. She had stopped answering when I asked about school events. Birthday gifts were acknowledged weeks late, if at all. Gloria often said the children were busy, overwhelmed, or spending time with Justin's family. I had assumed Brittany was disorganized and that Gloria wanted to manage access to everyone. I had not understood that the distance was deliberate. Noah rested his head against my arm. When your house is fixed, can I visit? Yes. Can I sleep in the blue room? No adult should promise you a room in someone else's house, I said. But you can visit me, and we can decide together what we do while you are there. Can we make pancakes? We can make pancakes. Lily smiled. Even if Mom is still in trouble? My relationship with you does not depend on whether I agree with your mother. Ethan looked at me for the first time without caution. So you did not stop liking us? I never stopped loving you. I did not ask them what Gloria had said about the house, what Brittany had told them before the birthday, or whether Justin discussed the wall. The things they volunteered were already more than children should have needed to explain. When Brittany returned, Marilyn took the children into the backyard. I waited in the living room. Brittany saw my expression and placed her purse on the chair instead of sitting down. What did they tell you? That should not be your first question. They are children, Sam. They misunderstand things. Lily had an unopened birthday card I sent months ago. I forgot to give it to her. She never received the books. They probably got lost. Ethan said Mom took the phone when they tried to call me. Mom thought they were bothering you. Noah thought I chose not to attend a school event I was never told about. Brittany folded her arms. You are making a list. I do that when people give me 3 explanations for the same behavior. She looked toward the backyard door. You did not only try to take my house, I said. You made your children believe I had stopped loving them. Her face changed. For several seconds, she did not deny it. Then she sat on the edge of a chair. You were not around much. I asked to be. You asked when it fit your schedule. I work full-time. That does not mean you get to erase every time I called, mailed something, or tried to make plans. You always had conditions. What conditions did I place on seeing the children? You would not help Mom when she needed money. You stopped giving us cash whenever Justin fell behind. Then you expected to show up and be the fun aunt. I stopped paying expenses you and Justin could not explain. You made everything feel like a transaction. No. I refused transactions and still asked to see the children. She rubbed both hands over her face. Mom said it was unhealthy to let them get attached to someone who might disappear whenever the family disappointed her. You knew why I left the company. You left anyway. I told you Dad asked me to sign work I could not verify. He said you exaggerated what happened. You chose his explanation because Justin worked for him and Mom kept helping you. Brittany looked at me sharply. You think every decision I made was about money. Not every decision, just the ones where you punished me after I said no. Her eyes filled, but I did not soften the truth to make the conversation easier. She admitted she had canceled visits after I refused to cover one of Justin's credit card payments. She admitted Gloria had told her not to let the children call me after I declined to co-sign a loan. She said she had sometimes withheld details about school events because she was angry that I could afford things she could not. I did not tell them you hated them, she said. You allowed them to believe I did not care. I was hurt. So you made them carry it. She stood and walked toward the window. Outside, Marilyn was showing Noah how to water a row of potted herbs. Lily chased bubbles across the grass while Ethan leaned against the fence reading the back of the book I had brought him. Brittany watched them for a long time. Mom said once everyone heard about the house, you would agree, she said. You knew I had not. Her silence answered before she spoke. I knew you had not said yes. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. What did you tell Mom before Grandma's birthday? Brittany pressed her lips together. What did you tell her? I sent her a voice message. What did it say? That she should announce it before you pulled her aside and refused. Why? Because I thought if the whole family congratulated us, you would not embarrass the children. You mean I would not correct the lie in front of them? I was desperate. You were also aware of what you were doing. She turned toward me. Our lease was ending. Justin had hidden how far behind we were. Ethan had finally stopped having trouble at school. Lily cried when we talked about moving districts. Noah was already anxious. I saw 4 bedrooms sitting empty, and I could not understand why you would not let us use them. Because they belonged to me, and because the house had not been proven safe. We did not know that at first. You had the urgent care note before I closed. Justin said it was dust. Mom said the mitigation records were complete. The clinician advised you not to take Noah back until the property was evaluated. I thought Justin would fix it before we moved. He wanted to open the wall after your family occupied the house. I did not know why. But you knew I had said no. She nodded once. I did not feel the relief I had expected from hearing her admit it. The confession did not restore the missed birthdays, the canceled afternoons, or Lily's unopened card. Do you still have the voice message? I asked. Her expression closed again. It was sent through my phone. That was not my question. I am not giving investigators my phone. I did not ask you to hand it to me. Your attorney can preserve and transfer the file. I have not hired an attorney. Then you should. Her voice rose. You are threatening me now? I am telling you this is larger than an argument over a house. Your message may establish that Mom planned the public announcement to pressure me. You need independent advice. What happens to me if I give it to them? I do not know. You always know what happens to everyone else. No. I know how to document what already happened. I cannot promise you a consequence in advance. She looked toward the yard again. I am not ready, she said. That is your decision. Mine is that you and Justin do not enter my house. The children are not to be used in messages, posts, or conversations about my property. Any proposal involving the house goes through my attorney. You are cutting me off. I am setting terms for contact after you admitted using your children to corner me. And the kids? I will see them only with your permission, or through Grandma Marilyn. I will not make them choose between us. Brittany gathered her purse. At the door, she stopped without turning around. I did not think they believed you stopped loving them. You did not ask what they believed. She left with the children 15 minutes later. Lily hugged me before getting into the car. Ethan asked whether he could keep the book. Noah reminded me about pancakes. That evening, Marilyn brought me a small digital recorder she used to save voicemail messages from her landline service. I do not know whether any of this matters, she said. Your mother has been telling me for years that you agreed to things before she asked you. The messages were ordinary enough to explain why none had seemed important at the time. In one, Gloria said I had already agreed to host Thanksgiving, though she had never spoken to me. In another, she said I had offered to pay for Ethan's summer program when I had only asked for the registration link. A third said I wanted Marilyn to cancel a doctor's appointment so the family could attend an event Brittany preferred. None proved insurance fraud. None mentioned the house. They showed a habit. Gloria announced my agreement first and expected me to absorb the cost of correcting her. My attorney preserved copies and documented that the originals came from Marilyn's own voicemail account. We treated them as context, not as proof of the criminal allegations. 2 days later, the investigator assigned to the licensing board complaint contacted my attorney. The board had issued a subpoena for specified records from Murphy Restoration's hosted communications provider. Among the preserved files was a voicemail Gloria had left on Justin's company VoIP number 3 days before the furniture delivery. The timestamp matched the period when my parents were still assuming Kenneth's limited liability company would obtain the house. The investigator did not send me the full audio. He read the authenticated transcript during a call with my attorney present. Gloria's voice began by telling Justin not to touch the east wall yet. She said the room needed to be assigned to one of the children first, so any removal work would appear to be ordinary preparation for the move. Then came the sentence that changed the house from something my family wanted into something they intended to use. Once it is Noah's room, she cannot stop you from opening that wall without looking like a monster. The voicemail proved Gloria had planned to use Noah's bedroom as leverage, but it did not tell us how far her control extended beyond the house. By July, the investigation had grown too large for any one person to understand alone. My attorney coordinated with the insurer's audit team, Laura handled the environmental findings, Cody worked through his own counsel, and the document examiner continued comparing the review forms bearing my signature. A forensic accountant joined after the vendor invoices began showing the same mailing addresses and payment patterns across multiple claims. For once, I did not try to master every part of the process myself. I attended meetings, answered questions, and corrected the timeline when someone misunderstood a date. I did not enter Murphy Restoration systems, search bank records, or contact property owners whose claims appeared in the files. The insurer reviewed documents it had contractual authority to audit. The licensing board obtained specified records through subpoenas. Attorneys used formal discovery where civil claims allowed it. The boundaries slowed everything down. They also meant my parents could not dismiss the result as something I had assembled in my living room. Laura arranged for a technician to examine the gray data logger found in the utility closet. He photographed the device, recorded its model and serial number, replaced the battery under documented conditions, and checked the internal clock against the manufacturer's service history. The clock had drifted by 11 minutes, not days or months. The calibration record showed the device had been serviced shortly before Murphy Restoration began work at the model home. Its stored readings covered the final week of drying. Humidity inside the utility area remained elevated for more than 40 hours after the company's completion report claimed the structure had reached stable conditions. The readings later dropped, likely when the house was reopened and dehumidifiers were used for showings, but the earlier pattern contradicted the claim that the wall cavity had been ready to close. Laura was careful when she explained it. "The logger does not tell us who entered false information," she said. "It supports the physical evidence and the original field notes. It shows conditions remained inconsistent with the final report. That distinction made the data stronger, not weaker." No single machine solved the case. It confirmed what the bowed trim, Cody's photographs, the rental records, and the altered drying report already suggested. The forensic accountant found the next layer in the vendor payments. 3 companies had billed Murphy Restoration for drying support, debris removal, and specialized cleaning across several disputed claims. Their names sounded legitimate. Their invoices carried different logos and formatting. All 3 used commercial mail drops. None had employees registered under the business names. None owned the equipment listed on their invoices. 2 had been formed within weeks of the first payment they received. Bank records obtained through lawful process showed the money moving from Murphy Restoration into the vendor accounts, then into an account controlled by Gloria. Across the claims under review, the total was approximately $187,000. Some of the money returned to the family in forms designed to look ordinary. A payment covered part of Justin's credit card balance. Another transfer went toward Brittany's overdue rent. Several checks funded charity events where Gloria's name appeared as the principal donor. I stared at the accounting chart during the secure presentation. For years, Gloria had explained every questionable decision as a sacrifice for employees. She had spoken about payroll, mortgages, and families depending on the company. Kenneth had used the same defense whenever anyone challenged him. The bank trail showed that at least part of the fraud had supported our own family and financed Gloria's public image. One payment had covered the deposit for a banquet honoring local women in business. I remembered sitting at one of those tables while Gloria accepted an award for ethical leadership. The money behind the flowers and engraved plaque had passed through a company that did not exist beyond a mailbox and a bank account. The accountant did not call her a hypocrite. He did not need to. He pointed to dates, account numbers, invoices, and transfers. That was enough. In August, my employer completed its internal review. The ethics director asked me to attend a video meeting with my manager and an attorney from the company's compliance department. I had spent more than 3 months on paid leave by then. My work badge sat in a drawer at my apartment, and I had stopped checking the clock at the times I used to begin meetings. The ethics director summarized the findings. My access logs showed no search of the model home, the failed developer, the bank's asset manager, or claims involving Murphy Restoration before I bought the house. My conflict disclosures had been current. My calendar, travel records, badge history, and communications did not support any of the 7 outside reviews attributed to me. The company concluded that I had not used confidential information to acquire the property and had not performed the disputed compliance reviews. I was cleared to return to work. The relief came quietly. I thanked them, closed the call, and sat at my kitchen table with both hands around a mug that had gone cold. I had spent months preparing to lose a career I had built correctly because my mother had found an old image of my signature. Being cleared did not restore everything. I returned under expanded recusal restrictions. Any matter involving Murphy Restoration, Kenneth, Gloria, Justin, the developer, or related vendors went directly to another team. I had missed enough of the performance year that I did not receive my usual bonus. The company did not reimburse my personal legal fees. There was no promotion waiting for me as a reward for surviving. There was simply my desk, my access badge, and a manager who told me he was glad I was back. That was enough for the first day. Dad requested another family meeting in September. This time, I agreed only after my attorney confirmed the discussion would concern the company's future, and not another attempt to trade my house for my reputation. We met in Grandma Marilyn's dining room because she refused to let Gloria control the setting. Kenneth looked older than he had in May. The licensing complaint, insurer audits, and vendor questions had reached the company's lenders. Employees knew something serious was happening even if they did not know the details. "You have been cleared," Dad said. "You got what you wanted. I wanted my name removed from work I did not perform. And now 28 employees may lose their jobs. I do not control the board, the insurers, or your lenders. You control whether you keep pushing. The evidence exists whether I speak about it or not." He leaned both hands against the table. "If the company closes, the innocent people you claim to care about will suffer first." Months earlier, I might have responded with a list of every choice that had led him there. I might have explained that employees were not protected by keeping unsafe work hidden. Instead, I answered the question beneath his accusation. If the regulators, insurers, and lenders propose a monitored transfer, sale, or restructuring that keeps uninvolved employees working while removing the people responsible, I will support it. Dad stared at me. "You think you get to decide who is responsible?" "No, that is the point. I do not decide the company's fate, and neither do you anymore." Gloria had remained silent until then. She sat beside him with her hands folded over a leather notebook. "You speak as though this family gave you nothing," she said. "Your father gave you your first job. We paid for your college. We introduced you to people who helped build your career. I am grateful for what you gave me freely." "Freely?" Her voice sharpened. "Parents do not keep invoices for their children. You do not need an invoice. You keep a lifetime balance and present it whenever I say no." Brittany looked down at the table. Gloria turned toward her. "Your sister has always believed independence means she owes no one anything." "I owe people honesty, respect, and the promises I actually make," I said. "I do not owe you my signature, my house, or silence." Justin had not attended. His attorney had advised him to avoid family discussions related to the investigation. That did not prevent Murphy Restoration vehicles from passing my street twice after Laura's assessment became known. I took a written notice from my folder and placed copies in front of Kenneth and Gloria. The notice prohibited Murphy Restoration, its employees, contractors, and agents from entering my property, performing work, collecting materials, or contacting vendors in my name without written authorization through counsel. Dad barely glanced at it. "Another notice. Yes, you enjoy this." "No, I have learned that verbal boundaries become misunderstandings the moment you dislike them." Gloria closed her notebook. "You will regret treating your family like adverse parties. You made yourselves adverse parties when you used my name to protect your files." I left before the discussion could become another circular argument about gratitude. Accepting help from lawyers, accountants, investigators, and experts had not weakened my control. It had allowed me to stop seeking confessions from people committed to changing the subject. By October, the insurer's audit and the licensing board's subpoena had produced a forensic image of specified folders from Murphy Restoration's company server. The reviewers did not search every private file. They examined records covered by the requests, including the disputed claims, compliance documents, vendor files, and administrator logs. One spreadsheet sat inside a folder labeled Internal Allocation. Gloria had created it. The file tracked responsibility for claims that carried missing records or unusual payments. Each row contained columns for field supervision, final approval, compliance review, and response strategy. Kenneth's name appeared under final approval. Justin's appeared under field responsibility. My name appeared under outside review. Gloria's name did not appear in any column assigning responsibility. The notes column made the purpose clear. For one claim, she had written that Kenneth would say he believed I still reviewed difficult files after leaving the company. For another, she noted that Justin should describe the equipment conflict as a field recording error. Beside the model home entry, she had written, Sam template. Ken approved. If questioned, legacy process. Gloria had not merely hidden her own role. She had designed an explanation in which Dad authorized the work. Justin mishandled the site, and I validated the records from outside the company. She would remain the office administrator who entered information provided by others. The vendor trail and misuse of my identity led the insurer to prepare a separate referral packet for state insurance fraud investigators. The packet was also sent for prosecutorial review. No one was arrested. No charges were announced. The referral meant another agency would decide whether the evidence supported a criminal case. My attorney warned me not to discuss the spreadsheet outside protected meetings. The board's counsel may use it at the disciplinary hearing, she said. But it must be authenticated, disclosed to the respondents, and admitted through the proper process. Dad has not seen it? His counsel will receive it during formal disclosure. I looked at the rows bearing Kenneth's name. He had spent months defending Gloria as the person who kept the company organized and protected the family from his mistakes. He did not yet know that her system had been built to make him the first person sacrificed when the truth reached the room. By November, the investigation had stopped feeling like a family dispute and started moving at the pace of institutions. That meant weeks could pass without a dramatic discovery. Insurers reviewed invoices. Licensing investigators interviewed former employees. Attorneys argued over the scope of document requests. Experts compared records created years earlier by people who now remembered events differently. I kept paying for all of it. Every month, I paid the mortgage on a house I could not safely occupy and rent on the apartment where I still lived. My legal bills continued even after my employer cleared me. Laura's testing, document preservation, and expert review were not free. The performance bonus I had expected that year was gone, because I had spent too long on administrative leave to qualify. I could afford the losses, but they hurt. My savings had been meant for furniture, repairs I chose, and the ordinary emergencies that came with homeownership. Instead, I spent them proving that my name and my walls had been used without permission. The insurer's audit team contacted homeowners connected to several of the disputed claims. I did not call those people myself. Some had claims involving my employer, and I refused to risk creating another conflict after finally returning to work. The investigators found that 3 homes had experienced recurring dampness, odors, or damaged materials after Murphy Restoration declared the work complete. That did not prove every repaired property was unsafe. It did not prove every respiratory complaint came from moisture. It did show that the model home was not the only place where the paperwork looked cleaner than the physical result. One couple had replaced baseboards twice. Another homeowner had paid a different contractor to reopen a wall after staining returned. A third family had assumed the musty odor was normal after a hurricane until the audit team contacted them. Their accounts supported the same pattern already visible in the equipment records, repeated signatures, and fake vendor invoices. Dad asked to speak with me during a formal mediation session in December. Both of our attorneys were present. A mediator sat at the end of the conference table, and the conversation was recorded only through written mediation notes protected by the applicable rules. Dad could not later claim he had approached me privately as a concerned father. He placed a list of employee names in front of me. 28 people, he said. These are the people who lose their income if the insurers force us to close. I did not touch the paper. The insurers have not asked me to decide whether the company closes. They listen to you. They listen to evidence. You could tell them the company can correct its mistakes. Can it? Dad leaned back. We have served this county for more than 20 years. One bad season should not erase that. This is not one incomplete form. It became 7 claims because Gloria reused an old template. That does not mean the work was fraudulent. The equipment was not where the report said it was. Vendors receiving payments did not perform the work listed. My signature was inserted after I left. The model home wall was closed while the logger still showed elevated humidity. His attorney shifted in his chair, but Dad continued. If you destroy the company, those employees will not thank you for being technically correct. I do not want innocent employees punished for decisions they did not make, I said. If the insurers, lenders, regulators, and a court approve a monitored transfer or sale that removes the responsible management, keeps qualified workers employed, and creates a protected repair fund, I will support it. Dad's expression hardened. You want me removed from my own company. I want the people who falsified records removed from control of those records. I built Murphy Restoration, and that does not give you the right to take everyone else down with it. The mediator asked whether Dad would consider stepping away temporarily while an independent manager reviewed active projects. He refused before his lawyer could answer. I will not hand my company to a stranger because my daughter bought a house and decided to punish us. That was Dad's fatal mistake. Even with his license, assets, and employees at risk, he cared more about retaining authority than preserving what could still be saved. The marriage between Brittany and Justin began breaking apart that same month. I learned the details through Brittany and her attorney, not by witnessing what happened inside their apartment. Justin had linked his company messaging account to a shared family tablet so he could answer work texts while helping the children with homework. When the company disabled his phone access during the audit, older synchronized messages remained on the tablet. Brittany found them while searching for a school document. She saw a conversation between Justin and Kenneth from the week before I closed on the house. Dad asked whether the East Room could be made usable without another inspection. Justin replied that the wall should remain closed until they controlled the property, because reopening it would expose the unfinished drying work. In another message, Justin wrote, Noah should not use that room until we replace the lower section. Once Brittany is inside, we can call it a remodel instead of remediation. Brittany did not post screenshots or send them to relatives. She turned off the tablet, placed it in a bag, and brought it to an attorney. Her lawyer documented its condition and arranged for a forensic copy. The messages were later matched to account records obtained through the company investigation. Brittany called me after the device had been preserved. He knew, she said. Her voice sounded flat rather than angry. Yes. He took Noah to urgent care. He heard the doctor say not to bring him back. Then he wrote that. I am sorry. I kept defending him because he told me the room only needed paint and new trim. You also had the medical advice. I know. I did not release her from that responsibility. She had ignored the warning because the house solved a problem she desperately wanted solved. Justin's deception made her situation worse, but it did not make her choices disappear. What are you going to do? I asked. I found a short-term apartment near the children's school. We are moving tomorrow. Do you need help finding movers? No. My attorney told me to stop making family decisions before I understand the financial consequences. It was the first time Brittany had declined an offer without turning the refusal into an accusation. She and Justin began living separately in November. She did not claim they were divorced. Their lawyers worked on temporary arrangements for the children, support, access to shared accounts, and responsibility for household expenses. Justin asked for regular parenting time. Brittany did not try to remove him from the children's lives as punishment for betraying her. The messages were relevant to trust, safety, and the investigation, but no one pretended they automatically made him an unfit father in every setting. By January, they had signed a temporary parenting and support agreement through mediation. Brittany found an administrative position at a medical supply office. It paid less than Justin had earned through Murphy Restoration, but it came with regular hours and health insurance after the probationary period. On her third week at work, she called me. I need to ask you something, she said. You can say no. I waited. Noah has an asthma follow-up on Thursday. My supervisor will not let me leave during training, and Justin has a meeting with his attorney. Could you take him? I will send the authorization and insurance information. If you cannot, I will reschedule. She had not announced that I would do it. She had not told Noah before asking me. She had not used his disappointment as pressure. Yes, I said. Send me the appointment time and the consent form. Thank you. I am doing it for Noah. I understand. At the clinic, Noah sat beside me, swinging his feet while we waited. He asked whether the pancakes I had promised would have chocolate chips. They can, I said. But not before the appointment. He grinned. Mom said you like rules. Your mother is correct about that. Grandma Gloria said rules make people lonely. I looked at him. Good rules help people know when they are safe. He considered the answer, then returned to the puzzle book I had brought. The doctor discussed his asthma with Brittany by phone and confirmed the follow-up plan. I did not ask for information beyond what Brittany had authorized. When I brought Noah home, she thanked me and did not turn the favor into a conversation about rent, lawyers, or the house. It was a small change. After everything that had happened, small changes were the only ones I trusted. Civil mediation concerning Murphy Restoration began in February. The room included insurer representatives, company counsel, lender attorneys, lawyers representing affected homeowners, and parties connected to the disputed records. I attended because my identity had been used and because I owned the model home. I was not there to take control of the company. The options were difficult. An immediate shutdown could leave active projects unfinished and employees unpaid. Allowing Kenneth and Gloria to continue managing the business created unacceptable risk. A monitored transfer or sale could preserve jobs, but only if lenders, insurers, owners, and a court accepted the structure. My attorney asked which proposal I could support. I support a supervised sale or transfer, I said. Uninvolved employees should have a chance to keep working. Money from the transaction and available insurance should be placed in a protected repair account for verified damage. Kenneth, Gloria, and Justin should have no access to the records or funds. Dad rejected the proposal. Gloria's attorney said she had never managed field operations and should not be removed from administrative work based on decisions made by the men. The mediator did not ask me to choose an external manager. The parties with legal authority negotiated that issue. My statement only established that I would not oppose a resolution preserving jobs if it also removed the people responsible and protected homeowners. By the end of the month, the settlement was not final, but the available options had narrowed. The lenders would not support continued control by my parents. The insurers would not resume normal business with Murphy Restoration, while the disputed management remained in place. The company could survive only if Kenneth surrendered the authority he had refused to surrender in December. Brittany made another decision before the licensing hearing. Through her attorney, she produced the original voice message she had sent Gloria before Grandma Marilyn's birthday. The file came from her cloud archive, not a recording copied from someone else's phone. Account records confirmed the sender, recipient, date, and timestamp. Her voice sounded strained on the recording. I know Sam never said yes. Make the announcement before she can pull you aside and stop it. If everyone congratulates the kids first, she will not take it away from them in front of the family. Brittany did not excuse the message when she provided it. Her attorney's letter stated only that she was producing the original file voluntarily and would answer questions through the proper process. The hearing was scheduled for March. During the required pre-hearing exchange, Gloria submitted a sworn declaration through her own counsel. She described herself as a clerical employee who entered information supplied by others. She claimed Kenneth was the sole operational decision-maker, Justin supervised the fieldwork, and she had no technical knowledge that would allow her to determine whether any record was false. Her declaration did not mention that she controlled the fake vendors, inserted my signature image, administered the compliance alias, attempted to delete folders, or created the responsibility spreadsheet. Kenneth's attorney received the declaration before the hearing. There would be no surprise document pulled from a hidden folder at the last minute. Dad saw that his wife had formally placed operational responsibility on him. He still believed he could control what happened next. The night before the hearing, my attorney sent me the witness order. Gloria would not answer broad questions that might expose her to criminal liability. Board counsel planned to rely on her sworn declaration, authenticated business records, and testimony from other witnesses. Kenneth had told his lawyer he would testify. According to the final email circulated before the hearing, he intended to set the record straight. He was walking into that room knowing Gloria had prepared to leave him, holding every decision she claimed merely to have typed. The licensing hearing began on a gray morning in March. 10 months after I bought the house, my parents had already promised to Brittany. The room was smaller than a courtroom and less dramatic than television had taught people to expect. 3 members of the board sat behind a raised table. A court reporter recorded the testimony. Counsel for the board organized boxes of exhibits beside a laptop. Kenneth and Justin sat with separate attorneys because their interests no longer aligned. Gloria sat behind them with her own counsel, close enough to appear part of the family and far enough to protect herself from their answers. My attorney sat beside me. She was there to protect my personal and professional interests, not to prosecute anyone. Board counsel would call witnesses, introduce records, and decide which questions mattered to the licensing case. Several former Murphy Restoration employees sat in the back. Cody waited near the aisle with his attorney. Brittany came alone. Grandma Marilyn sat beside her with both hands resting on her cane. The children were at school. I was grateful for that. They had already carried enough of the consequences created by adults. Kenneth's attorney began by arguing that the case had grown out of a private dispute. He described me as a resentful former employee who had purchased a distressed property with knowledge gained through my career. According to him, I became angry when my family asked me to help Brittany, and then used ordinary paperwork differences to retaliate against my father's company. He did not call me a liar directly. He made me sound like someone whose facts could not be trusted because her feelings were too strong. Months earlier, I would have wanted to interrupt. I would have wanted to explain every conversation and correct every word. He sat still. Board counsel called a representative from the bank's asset management company. The representative authenticated the public listing, the offer records, and the closing file. My bid had been submitted through the same process available to other buyers. It contained no reference to an insurance claim, restoration history beyond the seller packet, or non-public information. Kenneth's limited liability company had submitted a lower offer with financing conditions. The bank selected mine because it was stronger and carried fewer contingencies. I had not stolen a private opportunity. I had made a better offer on a publicly listed house. The ethics investigator from my employer testified next. She explained our conflict system, my annual disclosures, and the access restrictions that prevented Murphy Restoration claims from entering my assignment queue. She authenticated the audit of my searches, claim access, email, calendar, badge activity, and work devices. Before I made my offer, I had never searched the model home address, the developer, Kenneth's buying entity, or any associated claim. Kenneth's attorney asked whether an experienced claims auditor could learn about a property without leaving an electronic trail. The investigator did not become defensive. Anything is theoretically possible, she said. Our conclusion was based on the available evidence. We found no access, message, assignment, search, or communication supporting the allegation that Miss Murphy used confidential information. The complaint my father filed against me was displayed beside the system logs that disproved it. No one needed me to explain the contrast. Board counsel moved to the physical condition of the house. A representative from the equipment rental company authenticated the transaction histories. One dehumidifier listed at Model 14 had been checked into another job before Murphy Restoration's log claimed it stopped operating in my house. 2 air movers had overlapping assignments that could not physically occur. Justin's attorney suggested the equipment numbers might have been entered incorrectly by a field worker. Then Cody testified. He admitted he had entered the garage without permission on the night before my closing. He admitted he had removed the metal box and had waited almost 2 years before reporting what he knew. Kenneth's attorney used every one of those facts. You took company materials, he said. I took my field notebook and copies I had made, Cody answered. You also took battery packs when you were fired. Yes. You held a grudge against Mr. Murphy. I was angry. You entered property controlled by a bank using a code you had no authority to use. Yes, Cody did not pretend to be innocent. That made it harder to dismiss the parts of his testimony supported by records no one could accuse him of creating. The archived server contained copies of the same photographs he had preserved. The original warehouse binder matched the job numbers in his notebook. Rental company records confirmed that the machines had been moved. The data logger showed elevated humidity after the completion report claimed stable conditions. Cody's credibility did not need to carry the entire case. Independent records carried the facts beside him. Board counsel displayed a photograph of the exposed east wall, followed by the report stating that the same area had reached the target condition and been cleared for closure. Justin was asked why the wall had been closed before the final logger readings stabilized. The device was not part of our official monitoring setup, he said. Was it present in the utility closet during the work? I do not remember. Did you know additional drywall removal had been recommended? Cody recommended removing more than necessary on almost every job. Did Kenneth write close and release beneath that recommendation? I cannot authenticate his handwriting. Board counsel produced the server copy of the same page, stored inside Murphy Restoration's own job folder. Justin changed his answer. He may have written it. That does not mean the room was unsafe. No one asked him to diagnose the room. He had been asked why the recommendation was overruled. My testimony began after lunch. Board counsel showed me the training template I had designed 4 years earlier. I explained its purpose and identified the sample signature I had placed on the completed example. Then, she displayed 7 later review forms. Did you sign any of these? No. Did you perform the reviews described? No. Did you remain employed by Murphy Restoration on these dates? No. I explained why I had left the company. I described Dad asking me to sign a form for work I had not verified and my refusal to do so. Kenneth's attorney suggested that I continued helping Gloria with compliance questions after my resignation. I once directed her to existing password instructions, I said. I did not review claims, approve files, or authorize anyone to use my name. The document examiner explained that the 7 forms contained the same source image. Each signature carried identical defects, including the same gray mark and broken final stroke. Board counsel then used the timeline I had prepared, but only after the underlying records had been admitted. The first false review was dated while I was at a conference in another state. The second fell during a documented training session. Others conflicted with badge records, meetings, emails, and normal work activity. I did not claim to know who had inserted the signature before the forensic records identified the administrator activity. I said, the records showed that my old address remained active as an alias. I later learned that Gloria controlled the administrator account used to remove it. Kenneth's attorney tried once more. Is it possible you reviewed documents outside normal business hours? Anything is possible in the abstract. There is no evidence I did. Your name appears on the forms. My name was placed on the forms. That is why we are here. During the afternoon session, the hearing moved from false records to the pressure surrounding my house. Board counsel introduced the written proposal Gloria had sent after our meeting. I identified the email and confirmed that I had requested the terms in writing. The proposal offered to withdraw Murphy Restoration's professional complaint if I allowed Brittany's family to occupy the house, stopped the independent inspection, and permitted Justin to open the east wall. Brittany testified next. She looked smaller at the witness table than she had at Grandma's birthday. Her attorney sat behind her. But the answers belonged to her. She admitted she knew I had not agreed to let her move in. She authenticated the voice message she sent Gloria before the birthday announcement. The recording played through the hearing room speakers. My sister's voice said she knew I had never said yes. She asked Gloria to make the announcement before I could stop it privately, believing I would not correct the lie after the children were congratulated. Brittany also confirmed that Noah had been taken to urgent care after visiting the east bedroom. She had received written advice not to return him to the environment until it was assessed. Did you bring him back after receiving that advice? Board counsel asked. Yes. Why? Justin told me the room only needed minor work. My mother said the reports proved it was safe. I wanted to believe them because I needed the house. Did Samantha ever promise you the property? No. Did you prevent your children from communicating with her? Brittany's attorney objected that the question extended beyond licensing misconduct. Board counsel explained that it went only to the method of family pressure and Brittany's credibility, not to whether a license violation had occurred. The board allowed a limited answer. Yes, Brittany said. I canceled visits and allowed them to think she was too busy. Sometimes I did it because I was angry when she refused to help us financially. She did not look at me. I was relieved she told the truth and furious that the truth existed. Both feelings remained. Grandma Marilyn testified after Brittany. Board counsel showed her the old voicemail messages from Gloria. Marilyn authenticated them as messages preserved through her landline service. In one, Gloria claimed I had agreed to host Thanksgiving before asking me. In another, she said I would pay for Ethan's summer program when I had only requested information. The messages did not prove restoration fraud. They established a pattern of announcing my consent and forcing me to bear the cost of correcting the claim. Board counsel asked why Marilyn had challenged Gloria at her birthday dinner. Grandma adjusted her glasses. "Because I had heard Gloria say Samantha agreed too many times," she said. That night, Samantha was sitting at my table, holding the key to a house everyone else was giving away. She looked toward the board rather than my mother. A home built on a lie is just a trap with bedrooms. No one applauded. No one needed to. The last major exhibit was Gloria's internal allocation spreadsheet. Board counsel authenticated it through the company server records and administrator logs. The screen displayed columns assigning field responsibility to Justin, final approval to Kenneth, and outside compliance review to me. Gloria's own name did not appear in a responsibility column. Her attorney objected to any implication beyond what the document itself showed. The board admitted it with that limitation. Then board counsel placed Gloria's sworn declaration beside the spreadsheet. In the declaration, she described Kenneth as the sole operational decision-maker. She said Justin supervised field work, and that she merely entered information provided by others. The spreadsheet contained notes preparing the same explanation before the investigation began. Kenneth would say he believed I continued reviewing difficult files. Justin would call the equipment conflict a field recording error. The model home entry identified my old signature template and placed final approval on Kenneth. Dad had seen Gloria's declaration before the hearing. He had not seen the full authenticated spreadsheet presented beside it. His face changed as he read the notes. The board called a recess before his testimony resumed. In the hallway, Kenneth walked past his attorney and stopped in front of Gloria. My attorney and I stood near the drinking fountain several yards away. We did not follow them or attempt to record the exchange. Dad's voice carried anyway. "You said you were protecting this family." Gloria remained seated beside her attorney. "I was protecting what could still be saved. You put every approval under my name. You approved the work. You controlled the files. I entered what I was given. You used Samantha's signature." Gloria's attorney advised her not to answer. Dad stared at the woman he had defended for nearly a year. "You plan to leave me with all of it." Gloria looked up at him. "You were already the qualifier. Justin was already the supervisor. I did not create your responsibility. No, you created your escape." When the hearing resumed, Kenneth changed his testimony. He admitted that Gloria controlled the compliance mailbox, document templates, vendor setup, and final submission process. He said he had authorized early equipment transfers and approved closing the east wall, but claimed Gloria assured him the files could be completed administratively. The admission did not make him innocent. It made him accurate for the first time. Justin followed by acknowledging that both Kenneth and Gloria knew the drying work had not been completed as originally recommended. He admitted he planned to reopen the wall after Brittany moved in and described the work as a family remodel. Gloria did not take the witness stand. Her counsel relied on objections, the limits of her declaration, and arguments that administrative control did not prove she understood the technical falsity of the records. The board panel closed the evidentiary portion late that afternoon. The chair explained that no ruling would be issued from the table. The panel would review the exhibits, testimony, and written arguments before releasing a formal decision. No police officers entered. No one was arrested. There was no instant sale of the company, no sentence, and no dramatic confession that repaired what had happened. Kenneth sat 3 chairs away from Gloria while the attorneys gathered their files. He did not speak to her. She did not ask whether he was coming home. I walked out of the building without knowing which licenses the board would suspend or what the criminal investigators would eventually do with Gloria's records. But I knew something had already ended. My family had arrived believing they could survive by presenting one united version of the truth. They left the hearing unable to sit beside one another before any written order had been signed. The first written order arrived in April, nearly a year after my mother raised a champagne glass and announced that my sister was moving into my house. The licensing board did not describe what happened as a misunderstanding between relatives. Its findings stated that Kenneth had approved incomplete restoration work, allowed inaccurate records to be submitted, and failed to supervise the company in accordance with his responsibilities as its qualifier. His individual qualifier status was revoked, and he could no longer stand behind a contractor business as the person legally responsible for its work. Murphy Restoration's corporate license was suspended until the company appointed an independent qualifier and submitted an approved compliance plan. Justin received a 5-year suspension of his qualifier status for supervisory misconduct and false documentation. The organization that issued his water restoration certification conducted a separate review and suspended that credential as well. Dad called after receiving the order. His voice carried none of the confidence he had shown at Grandma Marilyn's birthday. "You destroyed everything I spent my life building." I stood inside the east bedroom, while an independent contractor marked the sections of wall that would eventually be removed. "I did not destroy what you built," I said. "I stopped you from hiding what you built it on. You could have handled this privately." "You tried to handle it privately. That was the problem." He said the board did not understand what it took to keep a company alive after a hurricane. I told him difficult circumstances might explain his first bad decision, but they did not explain years of falsified records, fake vendors, and stolen signatures. He ended the call without saying goodbye. The civil settlement followed in May. It involved the insurers, lenders, affected homeowners, Murphy Restoration, and several individuals connected to the disputed records. A judge approved the final agreement after mediation. I did not order the company sold. I did not have that authority, and I did not want it. A regional restoration firm agreed to purchase the remaining assets, active contracts, and customer list. All 28 employees were offered an opportunity to continue working if the independent review found they had not participated in the misconduct. Some accepted, others left. Money from the sale, remaining company assets, available insurance coverage, and personal contributions from Kenneth and Gloria funded a protected restitution and remediation account. The account paid verified claims through an administrator neither of my parents could control. Dad lost the company name he had treated as an extension of himself. I did not buy it, manage it, or take a position with the new owner. My part of the settlement addressed the unauthorized use of my identity, the damage to my house, and a portion of the professional and legal expenses I had incurred. I signed only after my attorney confirmed that the agreement did not require me to describe the fraud as an innocent error. Gloria's case continued separately. The insurance fraud investigation had access to bank records, server logs, vendor accounts, document metadata, and the attempted deletion history. The licensing hearing established professional misconduct, but the criminal process focused on what she had knowingly created, submitted, moved, and concealed. In June, Gloria entered a plea agreement involving document falsification, insurance fraud conduct, and misuse of my identity. The judge imposed 6 months in custody, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was ordered to pay restitution and prohibited during probation from working as a bookkeeper, fiduciary, or financial manager for another person or business. The community organizations that had once placed her name on donor walls and leadership committees removed her from their boards. The punishment that affected her most was not printed in the sentencing order. No one trusted her with access anymore. Kenneth changed every password on his remaining accounts. Brittany removed Gloria from the children's school and medical contact lists. Grandma Marilyn transferred the few documents Gloria had once helped manage to an independent service. The woman who had controlled our family by controlling information no longer received keys, account numbers, passwords, or permission to speak on anyone else's behalf. Before sentencing, Gloria asked me to submit a character letter stating that she had always been a devoted mother. I refused. She called through her attorney and asked to speak with me once before the deadline. I agreed to a monitored conversation. "You know I loved you," she said. "I believe you felt love. That is a cruel distinction. You loved us when love gave you authority. The moment love required you to respect a boundary, you called it betrayal." She said I had chosen strangers over my own mother. I told her I had chosen records she could not rewrite. I did not visit her before she reported to custody. Justin's cooperation reduced part of his civil exposure, but it did not restore his job, certification, or marriage. By July, Brittany and Justin were still legally married. North Carolina required them to live separately for a full year before either could seek an absolute divorce, and they had separated the previous November. Their attorneys were handling temporary parenting arrangements, child support, debts, and equitable distribution claims. The children followed a structured schedule. Brittany did not prevent Justin from seeing them, but she no longer allowed him to make decisions about their housing or medical care without written agreement. She lived with Ethan, Lily, and Noah in a modest apartment near their school. Her position at the medical supply office did not support the life Gloria had promised her, but it covered the rent when combined with temporary support. She attended financial counseling and learned the amounts of debt Justin had hidden. Brittany also posted a public correction on the same account where she had once implied, "I was forcing her children from their home. My sister did not take a house away from my children. Our parents and I promised them property that belonged to her without obtaining her consent. I knew she had not agreed, and I allowed my children to believe otherwise. That was wrong." She did not blame Justin, Gloria, desperation, or me in the correction. Several relatives deleted their earlier comments. A few apologized. Others remained silent. I stopped needing every person who had believed the lie to admit it. My own life did not reset when the orders were signed. My employer's clearance letter remained in my personnel file, and I continued working under expanded conflict restrictions. I did not receive a miraculous promotion. I had lost my annual bonus and spent approximately $31,000 on legal fees, environmental experts, and document review. For more than a year, I had paid rent and a mortgage at the same time. My homeowner policy did not cover damage that existed before the policy began. The lender approved a renovation loan after receiving the remediation plan, and I used $45,000 from my savings to start the work once evidence sampling and preservation were complete. The civil settlement eventually reimbursed approximately $78,000 toward remediation, professional expenses, and carrying costs. It did not make me wealthy. It brought me closer to the financial position I would have occupied if my family had not hidden damage inside the house and my name inside their records. The independent contractor removed the lower drywall along the east bedroom and utility area. The crew documented every layer before disposal, treated the affected structure, replaced damaged materials, and submitted the work for independent inspection. I watched the walls come down without touching anything. Behind them were darkened sections of wood, incomplete repairs, and the physical record of decisions everyone had once insisted were finished. By late July, the house passed the lender's inspection and the final independent review. Ethan was 11 by then, Lily was 9, and Noah was 7. My relationship with them had rebuilt through routines rather than dramatic promises. We spoke by video every week. I attended Lily's school performance and helped Ethan prepare a project about bridge design. With Brittany's written consent, I took Noah to a children's aviation exhibit after his asthma follow-up showed he was doing well. When the children needed something essential, I paid the provider directly or contributed through a controlled education account. I did not cover Brittany's rent, credit cards, or legal expenses. She stopped asking. Our first serious conversation without attorneys happened at a quiet restaurant halfway between her apartment and my house. Brittany arrived early. She did not bring the children. "I owe you an apology that is not attached to a request," she said. I waited. She apologized for encouraging Gloria to announce the house in front of the family. She apologized for ignoring the urgent care warning, for allowing Justin to treat the East Room as something he could quietly repair, and for using the children's housing fears against me. Then she apologized for the part that still hurt most. "I kept them from you because I wanted you to feel what I felt whenever you said no," she said. "I made them believe you were too busy or did not care. I was desperate, and I still knew it was wrong." I looked at my sister across the table. "I spoke to you like every conversation was a file I could organize," I said. When I was hurt, I shut the door instead of explaining what I needed. She nodded, but I continued. "My distance hurt you. It did not make your choices inevitable. I know. We agreed that rebuilding a relationship required rules neither of us could reinterpret. She would not ask me for loans. Neither of us would speak for the other. No one would promise my property, time, or money. The children would not carry messages or be used to create guilt. Our first family meetings would happen in neutral places until trust became more than a conversation. We did not hug and declare everything repaired. We scheduled another lunch. At the end of July, I invited Grandma Marilyn and the children to dinner in the finished house. Marilyn was 86 now. She walked through the front door, tapped her cane against the new floor, and examined the rebuilt east wall as though she personally intended to approve the contractor's work. Brittany brought the children and stopped at the entrance after helping Noah with his backpack. "I will pick them up at 8, she said. Lily looked between us. "Mom, aren't you staying?" Brittany did not step inside. She looked at me and waited. For the first time, she did not assume an invitation because the children had one. "You can stay for dinner," I said. She entered quietly and placed her purse beside the door. During the meal, no one knocked over his water. The glass rolled onto its side, sending a clear stream across the new table. Brittany stiffened and reached for 3 napkins at once. I handed Noah a towel. "It is a house," I said. "Things spill." He wiped the table while Marilyn told him he had missed a spot. Lily laughed. Ethan asked whether a chair could be damaged by 1 glass of water, then began explaining the protective finish before anyone answered. After dinner, the children ran upstairs. They stopped inside the 4th bedroom, the only room I had not furnished. Afternoon light stretched across the empty floor. "Who is this room for?" Lily asked. "I've not decided yet." Grandma Marilyn smiled from the hallway. "Good," she said. "That means the choice is finally yours." Brittany stood beside me and looked into the room she had once considered wasted because it did not belong to her children. She did not ask me to turn it into a guest room for them. She did not suggest they could stay on weekends or remind me how many bedrooms I had. "Whatever you choose," she said, "it is yours to choose." I left the room empty that night, not because I was afraid to fill it, and not because an empty room was a victory over my sister. I left it empty because no one else had the right to decide what belonged there. For the first time, my family understood that loving me did not give them ownership of my choices. For the first time, I believe some of them might learn how to stay in my life without trying to take my place at the center of it. You should never confuse family love with unlimited access to your money, property, time, or identity. Helping someone is meaningful only when you choose it freely. When relatives use children, public shame, or false promises to force your agreement, that is manipulation, not love. You also learn why clear boundaries should be supported by written records. Save messages, confirm important conversations by email, protect your accounts, and seek qualified help before confronting people who may destroy evidence. Being compassionate does not require rescuing adults from the consequences of their own decisions. You can protect children directly while refusing to finance dishonesty. Most importantly, do not ignore unsafe behavior simply because exposing it may embarrass your family. Silence can transfer the danger to innocent people. Tell the truth carefully, follow lawful procedures, and let accountability reach the people responsible. If this story gave you something useful to remember, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more stories.